Hey everybody, it's Angela, and today I have a really masculine grunge layout to show you guys, and this is totally different than other things that I've done before, and I really had fun with this. And I don't know how much of this is going to show on the camera, but I've used all kinds of texture paste and ripped things and spilled ink on it, and just totally grunged up this whole layout. It's got tons of dimension, and so let me take you through what I did and how I made this. First of all, I started everything on this this piece of paper, and I printed it from my digital scrapbooking collection. I looked at my digital papers, and these digital papers in the industrial strength collection had this really cool brick pattern there. And so I used this one. However, I desaturated it and made it a little darker, because I wanted a little darker grunge than the orange on this. So so I just desaturated a little bit, and then I printed it out on, and I'm going to show you this, this scrapbook paper, because I've had people say, you know, how do you get these big sheets, or how do you print out your scrapbook layouts and your digital layouts? And I have an Epson Stylus Photo. It's a 2200, and that's an older model, because I've had that printer about 6-7 years, I think, and it'll print 12 by 12. And so I get this 12 by 12 inch paper from Epson and run it through there. It is double-sided if I'm doing like 2 digital layouts. I can print one on the front and print one on the back and put it in my scrapbook album, and so that works really well. Sometimes I just print on one side. I use it for my altered art, for stuff like this. Sometimes I use it, I print out my digital thing and then my digital layout, and then decorate it with you know, like wild orchid craft flowers and other dimensional things to do a hybrid layout and stuff. So I use this paper a lot, and I really like it because it's pretty sturdy. And for this, I've found that having that nice sturdy paper, it can really take a beating and withstand it. It can put all this liquid and stuff on here, and it takes it just fine. So anyhow, I printed the bricks on there to begin with, and you can see here's some of the original bricks right here that were printed on the paper, and you can see hints of it down here and down through here. This is the original printed paper, so these bricks here. And then what I did was I took some of this modeling paste from Liquitex and my palette knife, and I just smeared some of the modeling paste on here, just like almost as if it were spackle on there. So I just kind of smeared a bunch of it in different random spots, and then I took this cool template that I got, you can't see it, here we go, that I got from SaCrafters, and this was the first time I got to use it. I just ordered it from her, and I loved some of the results she was getting, so I really wanted to try it on this. These bricks aren't the same scale as the printed ones, but I didn't think it would matter for the effect I was going for. So then what I did was, after I put some spackle in different areas, I put this down, spackled over a portion of it, and lifted it up, and then I did that in several different areas throughout the whole layout. And oh, and I also distressed all the edges with my Tim Holtz distressor, and I ripped a few areas in the paper as well. And then I also inked it with I inked the edges with some of the Tim Holtz spiced marmalade, worn lipstick, tea dye, and then the Timber Brown Stays On. So all those colors, although you can't really tell, I don't know if you can tell, there's some of the worn lipstick, you can see a little bit of red peeking through. Some places you can see a bit of the orange spiced marmalade peeking through. Probably the Timber Brown Stays On is probably the dominant color, because I went over that last, over all the edges, just to darken them up. And so then after I got the bricks, and I dried the bricks too, I started playing with all my different sprays. And I have, let's see, these are all the inks and sprays that I use. So I really just went to town on this. I used the Lindy's Stamp Gang, the Cape Cod Coral to give a little bit of that orange brick color to it. I also used the Smoky Sapphire, which gave kind of a brown look to it. And let's see here. Then the rest is all Tattered Angels. I use the Black Magic. I use the Black Magic pretty much for these big drips here over the top. I used the, let's see, Tattered Leather. Ooh, this one's, that could be bad. It's coming in undone. The Tattered Leather, Red Velvet, Creme de Chocolate, and what is this one? Espresso Bean. So those were all the different colors, and I just would spray them, then dry it with my heat tool, and then spray a little more and dry it. And then, like I said, at the very end, I kind of put these darkest ones, the Black Magic, and let it drip through or kind of run through the brickwork. And then I dried it, and I left my heat gun so it would bubble. Just a couple places I kind of bubbled it, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to see that. But just to bring up, and I want some down here, just let it bubble. And this layout, after I got to that point, I didn't have any particular photos in mind. You know, I was just kind of playing because I got my stencil from SaCrafters, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to play with this. And so I got to this point, and I was thinking, you know, this is a real masculine look, and so I didn't really want to use any flowers on the layout. And I had these little pieces of metal that I got, and I got them from this gentleman's metal shop. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to make a layout of him and his dog. It's a friend of ours, and he has a metal shop, and I picked up, he has a metal lathe, and these are all just little metal curlicues that came off on the lathe that were on the shop floor. And I asked him if I could have them, and he's like, yeah, please, take as many as you want. And some of them are kind of blue, were already kind of blue colored, some kind of a little bit of purple, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to see the different colors. Some of them were just tiny. Some of them were like round medallions. Some of them were more funnel-like. And so I just kind of, let's see, how do I explain this? I just have like a big nut down at the very bottom, and I filled that nut with a whole bunch of E6000. And then I just kind of stuck the ends of these little metal pieces into that E6000 and just kind of arranged them, and then let it dry. And then I also put in this little light bulb, which I inked with it with a little bit of the alcohol ink, the slate and ginger. So I just alcohol inked those up. And I think that was the rest of these were like pre-grunged, which was great. This old slot screw was already kind of rusty and grungy. This spring here was already kind of grungy like that. Here's a spring and a key, and down here there was like a little metal collar. There's a marble from I don't know where, but it was already kind of grunged up and in my stash, so I just kind of stuck that in there. And then this little brass tag, which I used my metal punches on to punch the date that the photos were taken. And also this band here in copper is Basil Hayden is it's whiskey. I think it's whiskey. And this is a band that goes around the bottle, and I had saved it in the stash, and I liked that it was like a copper band, and it's got like gold colored studs and then silver colored initials, and I just kind of liked that mixed metal, so I stuck that on there. On the end of it, it already had a little hole, was attached to the bottle, and so I just had this spring with a hook on it, and I just kind of left that kind of dangling there. And I have no idea what this was in a previous life. I just liked the color of it, and so I put that on there. The photos I put onto like a charcoal colored cardstock, which I use my Tim Holtz distressor on. Same way with the picture of the dog, and I put the dog up on pop dots. And then after I was done and all the E6000 had dried, oh, and I attached this tag with a Phillips head brad. So the brad, I think, is like the only scrapbooky embellishment on here. I think everything else is a found item. The metal pieces, the only cautionary things or something you should be aware of if you ever work with these are that, one, they do have a little bit of maybe metal or, I don't know, engine oil or some kind of oil on them, probably to help them go through the lathe process. So there might be a little bit of machine oil. Second, they're not really springs, so they are brittle. You can break these. They're a little more fragile than they actually look. And the third thing is that they do have sharp edges, so you have to be careful when you're working with it. I did not wear gloves in working with this, and I didn't have any problem, but it is something that you should be aware of. So anyhow, I let this all dry overnight, and you know how your paper can sometimes get a little warped and everything when you do a multimedia layout like this. That's why I really like to back it on something, because when I glue it on to another surface, it helps flatten this out. What I adhered it to was this corrugated cardboard, and it's a really, really thin cardboard, and it was just some packaging. We bought a barbecue over the summer, and they had this in there, and I like grabbed it out of the recycling bin. I'm like, oh, that's great. So I cut it into 12 by 12 squares, and I just took a little of the Timber Brown Stays On and inked up where it would show kind of on the edges and where this tear and stuff was, where this was curled back, and just took my glue gun and adhered it to the cardboard, and that, you know, made it nice and flat. I'm going to give it to him, and he can use a couple rusty nails if he wants and just nail it right in the wall of his shop, or he can lean it up against something, or he could put it in a shadow box if he wanted to. I'm pretty sure this will probably just stay at the machine shop, so I know he'll really enjoy it. But I was going to give him the option of using maybe these little clips. They're like, if I can get them apart, they're like the little clip-it-up clips. There they go. Except they're a little bit smaller and a little grungier looking. And I thought I could put 2 of those on the top, and so he could hang it a little easier that way. And oh, and just so you know, if any of you girls use the Clip It Up, you know how the Clip It Up clips can be kind of expensive. Recollections now has them at Michael's, and you can get not these ones, but the regular bright silver bigger ones that are they're just like the Clip It Up clips, but they're by Recollections and they're at Michael's. So they're a lot cheaper. So anyhow, this is my layout, and I still have a box of these curly cues left, so I have enough for another layout if I want to, but I just really had a lot of fun playing with these and playing with the modeling paste. And thank you, Saw, for the brick template. I really had fun working with it and doing this grunge layout. So if you have any questions or any comments, just let me know and I'll be glad to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.